on August 26th.
Oops, sorry, Shauna.
No worries. Thank you for starting the recording, Drew. I'll start over. August 26th, TAC meeting for the SCTA. Welcome. The first item on our agenda is introductions. I will go ahead and read the list of participants rather than asking everyone to chime in. If I miss you at the end, please do say something. So we'll start with myself. I am Shauna Gause with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. We also have Drew Nichols with SCTA. Steve Bertelbaugh is joining us. Vincenzo Carrasa, who is here from Transportation and Public Works. I see Tony Bertolero, who is here for the City of Sebastopol. Feels like romper room. I see. Alejandro Perez, who is here with Windsor. Ben Kagiyama, who is here with Healdsburg. Chris Barney of SCTA. Craig Scott, City of Cotati. Dana Ture, SCTA. Eric Jansen, City of Cloverdale. Elizabeth Tyree, Regional Parks. Edie Takata, Rohnert Park. Hunter McLaughlin, which Transportation and Public Works. James Cameron, SCTA. Janet Spillman, SCTA. Joanne Parker with SMART. Ken Eichstadt, the City of Petaluma. Kristen Thigpen, here from Department of Health Services. Matt Wargula, I'm not sure your affiliation, so you can let us know in a moment. Nader Dahu, who is here with Transportation and Public Works. Nancy Adams, City of Santa Rosa. Orlando Ramirez from Caltrans. Sean Sosa, Santa Rosa City Bus. Stephen Schmitz, Sonoma County Transit. Tom Conlin, member of the public, and Vanessa Garrett, Rohnert Park. Have I missed anyone?
You missed me, Shauna.
Oh, Steve Urbanek, Transportation and Public Works. Hi, Steve.
How you doing?
Good. Did I miss anybody else? Matt, if you could tell us.
I'm here on behalf of the City of Sonoma. Colleen Ferguson couldn't make it today.
Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, I think that covers everyone. So we will move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion about the minutes, unless there is discussion about the previous month's minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
From Eric Jansen, thank you. All those in favor, raise your hand. Excellent. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. And that moves us on to the SB 743 travel model update and the VMT calculator. Chris Barney, take it away.
Thanks, Shauna, and good afternoon, everyone. So I just have a number of updates associated with SB 743 this afternoon. The first thing I wanted to provide an update on is the discussion about the VMT reduction calculator. So I presented on this at the TAC last month and had a similar discussion with the planners and the planning advisory committee. And the planners are definitely interested in the option we discussed last month for funding a quicker development for a VMT reduction estimator tool. So for those that weren't part of that discussion last month, the idea is to provide a spreadsheet-based tool that could be used to analyze projects as part of the project review process, to provide a quick VMT estimate, to help out with screening, and then to help provide estimates for VMT reduction and estimation. So yeah, the planners recommended we come up with a local contribution plan for that. So I'm working on that. We can get it out to you guys as well. And we're looking at a population share base for that, along with an updated scope and schedule. So working on that, that should be available soon. The planners also recommended that I compile a SB 743 implementation or readiness summary for Sonoma County jurisdictions. So I've put together a survey that I'll be sending out to the planners, and I think it'd be worth sending out to you folks as well, the public works and engineering staff as well, to fill out. And basically the survey just asks, what you've done to implement SB 743 so far, and what would be helpful. So simple Google form, should take about under 5 minutes to complete. So we'll get that out soon as well. So if you have some time and interest, I encourage you to take a look at that and fill that out. And I can provide a summary of the results of that once it's complete. And then finally, there's been a release to the 2010 CAP-COA GHG handbook. So this is a pretty big tool or a handbook that goes through potential GHG reducing actions, which is also applicable to VMT reduction. So that's available through the state now. So I can go ahead and put a link to the draft of that document in the chat. But that's it for my update this month. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Nancy, I see you have your hand raised, but I think that was from the vote on the minutes. Or did you have something that you wanted to contribute to that discussion about the VMT calculator? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to assume that that was left over. Tom Conlon looks like he has a question and or comment. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, thanks. Quick question for Chris there. I'm curious how comprehensive this quick VMT estimation tool will be, and how, whether it will be really defensible for all the projects we'll want to use it.
Well, it's focused on individual small projects, so not countywide impacts. So it'll actually pull from research, including the document I've linked in the chat and the old CAP-COA documents on VMT mitigation. So, there's still a lot of work going on quantifying.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking specifically with respect to the excellent travel behavior study data we have locally.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that a spreadsheet is a reduction in the granularity of that data analysis.
Right. Yeah. It'll actually pull in information from the travel model and the travel behavior study and streamline that for local use. You can plug in a project, including number of units, square feet, type of projects, where it's located. So based on that information, it'll pull information from the travel behavior study in the model and streamline those calculations.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised. Thank you, Chris. That moves us on to the Vision Zero Working Group update. Kristen?
Hi, hello everyone. Let's see, we've had some we've onboarded our contractor for engagement and communications, which is MIG. And I don't know if I've caught that last time we met or not, but they're working towards a questionnaire map, the survey that has that I have actually a question for all of you for regarding. We really want to avoid redundancy in gathering information, and with the LRSPs in motion in the majority of the county, really want to make sure, if at all possible, that we don't just do another survey. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. None of us do. So one thing I'm looking into with GHD is, is it possible to share some of the data? And if they're willing and able, how soon would we be getting it, and what type is being collected? And I can look at the surveys themselves. But one of the things that, assuming that we can get that answer quickly, which is one of the keys, this is the Vision Zero project, as you all know, has been so delayed by COVID that we're on the grant really having to accelerate our efforts because it ends in February. So missing another month is very important during this time not to do. So I'm hoping that the answer will be that we can share some of the data and that it will be close enough to what we need. But I thought I would offer up if any of you have input, thoughts, because one of the things that is key to this process is the LRSP Vision Zero delineation. And if you have any thoughts, either in this at this moment, or if you have any that you'd like to send me directly, and I could put my email in the chat, I'd really be open to any thoughts you have. Other than that, our next meeting is September 14th from 1 to 2:30 for the VSAC. And of course, many of you attend that, but anyone is welcome, and we're starting to get into the heart of some of this. So would love to have you attend and hear your thoughts. So I think that's probably all I have. Chris Barney, you can help me if I've missed anything, but yeah, mostly I would love to hear any thoughts you have about the LRSP Vision Zero delineation. Am I seeing
Nancy, I see your
Vincenzo?
hand
Yeah,
raised.
Yeah, I
go
think
ahead,
so.
Shauna.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yay! I have my button turned off. Sorry. So I'm going to ask Chris really quickly before I do the Vision Zero. I'm assuming your scope amount or your amount for this VMT calculator is still around 75,000. Is that what you're thinking?
That's
Sorry.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right,
Yeah.
thank you. So then to the Vision Zero comment and presentation, thanks, Kirsten, for giving us all an update. I would just suggest using, whatever is coming out of our local road safety plans to help support the Vision Zero. And so, from Santa Rosa's perspective, that is, I think, the most efficient and the best use of trying to pull together that information for your efforts. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. I'm curious, I don't know where, I know everyone has done it on a different timeline. And I think that that's the only hiccup on this is what I can go into Santa Rosa's for you to use you as an example. But, I know Healdsburg, I think, is pretty far along, or if not complete, but, not everyone is there. I know Sebastopol's sort of just beginning. So it's one of the things is that timing that I was mentioning earlier. So maybe it'll be here and there. Maybe we'll look at those who are complete and are able to share, and it's close enough to what we need, and we'll have to move on with others and target specific areas based on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's a great, the timing is a great question. And I don't know for the jurisdictions who aren't quite as far along as, maybe some of the others. I would want them to weigh in to see how they best can support you, knowing that they're not quite as far along in their safety plan as some of the others. So, and I don't know who those are, so I can't really address that. But I think that would be, I still think that using that information is the most efficient way to help support your efforts.
Okay. Anyone else? Maybe someone who's starting up right now or just beginning the process?
Yeah, this is Tony from the city of Sebastopol. And that's correct that Sebastopol hasn't started up yet because we just recently got our funding agreement with Caltrans. So we'll be looking to start the process in mid-September is what we're looking at. We're just waiting for some funding documents back from Caltrans to get started. So we're not far along as compared to many others. And so what we would be interested in is to find out what is it that you're looking for so that as we kick off the work, we can work with a GHD on what we can get and what is important to get early on. Maybe that'll also be something that you could provide us so that we could try to coordinate with you on that.
Super. Thanks, Tony. If anyone has any thoughts, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, that moves us on to Measure M discussion. And the first thing on our list is the invoicing and obligation status. I'm going to click on here. Last month, we brought you the end of the fiscal year for 2021 and the new fiscal year for 21-22. This month, it's simply the 21-22. We did resolve a lot of those issues that were outstanding. So the only thing that is left outstanding is the Runner Park access across 101. I think we are still waiting. We got an estimate, but I don't know that we've seen the invoice for that yet. So everything else is current as far as I know. So please feel free to message me if there's something else that I need to address on that. And then the other item under number 6 is just a reminder that the fiscal year is coming to a close, or it has come to a close for Measure M. So your Measure M reporting letters are due for the local street projects, the bike ped projects, and the local streets and roads programs, also local bus transit programs. Those are due by September 15th this year. And if you have an open obligation for any of those programs, then you need to submit a reporting letter. Each of the jurisdictions that receives LSR and LVT money has to submit a reporting letter for those programs. If you have a project with more than one open obligation, that being if you had an obligation for environmental and design, we would expect 2 reporting letters, one for each of those developmental phases. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. There is a lot of information in the 2019 strategic plan in chapter 4 regarding reporting. So if you have any questions and I'm not available, you can go there first, but I am happy to answer any questions that you have either by email or by phone. And with that, we will move on to the next item, which is number 7, regional information, the federal inactive obligation status. Currently inactive is the County of Sonoma and the cities of Santa Rosa, Cloverdale, and the SMART train. So if we could go over those items, I'd really appreciate it. And I'm not sharing my screen so that I can see all of you. Hopefully you all have this item in front of you. Let me know if you would prefer for me to share screen.
I prefer if you could share the screen.
Okay.
I only have one screen on mine and it's hard for me to go back.
Okay. But because Sebastopol doesn't have any, I'm less worried about you, Tony. So you don't have anything that's
true.
Sonoma County, Nader, I know you have sent a number of updates. Do you want to just quickly run through the ones that are inactive on this list?
Sure. The 5920, the 127, we submitted an invoice. 92, we submitted an invoice a couple of days ago. And for 138, we don't have any funds remain that we can invoice against.
Okay.
146.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
Because I'm suspecting that we're not going to get any funds for that. I don't know. The 138, that's a bridge project, right? So
yes.
Do you, I mean, what happens if we reach the end of the 10 years and there's still no funding available? Are you guys prepared to have to pay that back? Do you have a plan for what happens?
Okay. Yeah, I can send you an email, give you more details on this one, but
okay.
We had like 240,000 remain. We want to do feasibility study due to the community's interest. They want rehabilitation of the existing bridge instead of replacement. So the county currently is funding from its own money to do a feasibility study, rehab versus replacement. Hopefully this will be cleared in the next probably 6-7 months. We're anticipating the RFP to go out in the next 2-3 weeks to get a consultant on board.
Great.
So hopefully we'll resolve it before the 10 years, which we have another probably 2 years or 3 years to go.
Great.
Hopefully. But I'll send you details. Actually, I'll give you a detailed rundown for all on the list. The next one, the 146, 125, and 129, we submitted an invoices a couple of days ago. One of them is the final, that's the 125. It's been with Caltrans for a while. They haven't closed it.
Okay.
The ER 576 does not exist anymore. I will be sending you, and I will be requesting you probably to reach out to Caltrans to eliminate it from their list, because I'm becoming very sensitive to 567 or 576. 151, it's administered by our DHS department. We're working on some revision to the final report and invoice, should be submitted in the early next week. And 503, the staff is working with the consultant to resolve the DBE comments received from Caltrans.
Okay.
But I'll send you a complete updates in writing.
Okay. Thank you, Nader.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's go to Santa Rosa. 39 locations within the city of Santa Rosa, upgrade and replacing protected pedestrian signals, I think.
Hold on, Shauna. I'm pulling something from the printer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm learning to readjust to being back in the office in a hybrid mode. So that's our flashing yellow arrow project, and so the engineer's been emailing back and forth with Ken. The last correspondence he had was on Monday, the 16th, and apparently there was something that Ken needed for something, and for some sort of a justification for an extension. So he provided that information to Caltrans and said, I don't think we need, to submit anything else. Please let us know if you need anything else, right? So we haven't heard back, to my knowledge, from Ken, and that was on August 16th. So this has been an ongoing conversation for over a year with trying to get this final invoice and project closeout with this project. So I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so you're actively working with Caltrans.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm the engineer is. So I mean, the good news is that we've got Ken in an email trail so that we can track how we're doing. Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully next month we'll say it's a done deal, but I'm I don't know at this point.
Yep.
All right. All for me.
All right, Cloverdale, I know got cleared. So Eric, you're off the hook. I saw that happen. Well done. Then we get to Smart.
Hello.
Hello.
Is that I don't have it in front of me. I'm assuming it's Payran to South Point pathway.
Yes.
Yes. That project is completed and we're just needing to submit closeout paperwork, and we have a round drafted, but we're trying to avoid the 17 versions going back and forth. So we're trying to clean a few things up, and I think we learned a lot in our most recent closeout. So we should hopefully be a little bit more productive when we engage Caltrans this time.
Great. Thank you. All right, and let's see on the next page. Yeah, those two were just Sonoma County, so we're good. All right, that concludes that item. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you going through those status reports with me. The next thing is the draft annual obligation plan. And hopefully everybody has seen this, everybody that's on the annual obligation plan. in the agenda packet is a email reminder from John Saley at MTC that tells you all of the instructions of how you are supposed to respond if your project is listed in the draft annual obligation plan. I have been working with a number of you, but if you are on the draft annual obligation plan and you have not yet responded, please do respond. This is an opt-in or opt-out item. You can't be silent. If you are silent, you are automatically opted out. I will get to you in just a second, Nader. Thank you. So the requirement is to respond to MTC and provide the status of your project. That includes having a field review completed or scheduled in September. It means that you are on track to submit a request for authorization by November 1st of this year. I've talked to Craig. I know that that's his quick strike project is going to be slightly later than that, but he's actively working on it. That one is cool. We're keeping that one in. But if you cannot make that request for authorization deadline, if you cannot say when you expect your project to have a construction award, then you probably should get pushed out. And that's okay. Now is the time to say that. If you know that you're not going to be able to deliver in that time frame, then we should push your project out for another year. And that's totally okay. It's much better to do it now than it is to have it in the obligation plan and then fail to deliver. So if you are having doubts, if you have concerns, if you're having trouble with right away, now is the time to say something. If you think you're good, then you opt in, you say, yes, we are absolutely on board. Everything is good to go. Keep us in the plan. The other thing that needs to happen is you need to know, doesn't need to happen, but I need to tell you that if your funds are from OBAG 2, next year is the last year that you can obligate. So if you have OBAG 2 funds, that's STP-CMAC programmed in the second cycle of OBAG, the One Bay Area grant. Then next year, the funds must be obligated by January 31st of 2023. So if you do have OBAG 2 funds and you do want to push out, that's totally fine. But you must know that you have to have that request, you have to have that authorization, that is the E76 in hand by January of 2023. If that's not going to happen, then we should talk about reprogramming those funds and then possibly putting OBAG 3 money on whatever project we're talking about. So that is a conversation that we should absolutely have. So if you haven't already had that conversation with me and you're having doubts or you have concerns, then let's schedule a time to talk about it. Are there any questions? I see 2 hands raised so far, and Nader was first. So I'm going to go to Nader and then Joanne and then Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. I know that Cindy Rader was in contact with you. Did the county officially submitted something to you that satisfies this memo from John Saley, or do I have to follow up and submit something officially?
I'm still waiting for a status report from either, I think it's Glenn or
Yes.
Cindy.
I think Glenn most likely.
Who we're going to write a summary and then talk about what needed to happen for that project. And for the Crossing Bridge, right?
And he's aware of Tuesday's deadline.
Yes, I made it very clear what the deadline was and when they're supposed to respond. That was a conversation we had last week, and I have not yet seen a status update from them.
Okay, thanks for the updates. I'll follow up at my end.
Great.
I just want to make sure that I fulfilled my commitment on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nader.
Sure,
Joanne, go ahead.
Now I got to put my hand down too. Okay, there are so many buttons to push. Just so you know, we have 2 projects on the list, and they're both to be transferred to FTA. I'm waiting to hear that the tip amendment that incorporates them both is final. I've got an email into Adam Crenshaw to ask about an estimate for when that happens. And then we'll commence with the process of requesting the transfer to FTA. I see the deadline for us is January 31st or something like that, 22. The transfer process becomes this giant black hole, and it usually takes about 3 months, but in my experience. So I just wanted to let you know. So I'm aware of it and we're working on it, but it's a little bit out of our control.
Okay, so if it's a 3-month process, then you would want to make that November 1st request for authorization date.
As soon as Adam tells me that the tip amendment is completed, I'll begin. But I can't do it until then.
Are those quick strike projects?
Yes.
Okay, then you have slightly more time because that one's got a little bit different time frame. I think it has to be obligated by September of 22.
Okay.
So
they've got January 22 in there for some reason, I think. So
yeah, that's for the rest of STPC MAC. Quick strike is a slightly different.
Okay. And so I'm confused, opt in or opt out. If I do nothing.
Still opt in.
Oh,
you want to remain in the obligation plan.
I have to actively tell him what he's got in there is good.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You betcha. Nancy?
Yeah. So actually I have kind of a similar thing that Joanne brought up, because we've got that. I just realized that our transit project, the transit roadbed rehab is in there, which is another quick strike project. So I need to reach out to our transit folks, Rachel, and I'm sure.
I've been working with Sean.
Oh,
that's all.
Most excellent.
Yeah.
So is it okay to keep it in there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Shauna.
Sure.
This is the best news I've heard today. All right, that I don't have to do anything. Excellent. Thanks.
Tony?
I just want to clarify what happens with the tier 2 quick strikes. I guess I was assuming
yours is, so yeah, you mean the second round?
The second round, funds? I call it, yeah. I mean, does that mean that we have to have obligation by September
of 2022?
2022, which means that we need to submit our request for authorization. It's not November, then it's a little bit later. Is that correct?
Because your project will not, because it's in the second tip amendment after the air quality conformity lapse and all of that happens, we're not going to get an open tip to submit your project into the tip for an amendment until like October, November, December timeframe. So you're not going to be able to submit your request for authorization until after that happens. I believe once MTC approves it, you should be able to get, and there's a staff report that says, hey, it's in this tip amendment, then Caltrans should grant you a field review. And
so because we're working with Caltrans right now and trying to get
do it right now
they won't do it
because it's not in the tip right now.
Right. Okay. So is there a target date that we be looking at, Shauna, to make sure?
You just need to make sure that and you'll get notified probably by MTC, but it'll be when the air quality conformity lapse is over and the tip is again open for tip amendments. Then that will be the next amendment that goes in. It'll go in, like I said, sometime October, November timeframe. And then it'll get approved December-ish. And then you'll be able to submit a request for authorization. Before then, as soon as MTC approves the amendment, because there's 3 steps to a tip amendment. MTC approves it, then Caltrans approves it, then FHWA approves it.
I see.
They have been streamlining it. It used to be like 3 months that it took in order to get a tip amendment. They have been streamlining it, so it should go slightly faster than that. But once MTC approves it, then there's a list of projects that are proposed for an amendment into the tip. At that point, when Caltrans can see that, then it should be open for you to do what you need to do.
Okay, so we probably won't be able to do our field review till it's looking like probably around October or November.
Yeah.
timeframe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in
okay.
order to get it into the tip amendment, it needs
Right.
to go in by September 1st, right, in FMS. That's what Joe and I have been working on.
Right. Got it.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised. Were there any other questions regarding the draft annual obligation plan? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the local assistance training day. Did want to draw your attention to this, so I am going to share my screen if that's okay, Drew. Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. That one. Share. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the item in the agenda packet,
Yes.
which is the local assistance training day. So local assistance is holding a training day that will cover all of these topics. It's a great way to sort of cram in a lot of local assistance knowledge into a single training session. And I am drawing your attention to it because MTC, you should have received an email from John Saley at MTC this morning saying that MTC is going to use this as their biannual training for all of the single points of contact. So when you are designated a single point of contact, you agree that you will participate in biannual trainings. And if you are a new SPOC, then you need to go through a training about regional requirements and deadlines as well. Because MTC isn't going to be sponsoring anything this year, they are going to use the training that they did a couple of years ago. There's a recording for that, and you can listen to that as well. So if you have a new SPOC, new single point of contact, they need to do both things. But if you are the single point of contact and have been for a while, then you need to register for the local assistance training day. If you, for some reason, cannot make that, there is an option in John Saley's email for how you can remedy that situation and fulfill your requirements as SPOC for regular updates. Okay, are there any questions regarding training day? I
Shauna,
see Joanne, go ahead.
Is it open to more than just the SPOC, or is it capped?
Oh,
at a certain
absolutely.
number of people?
Anybody who wants to can go.
Like we could have a whole party at our organization and bring everybody in to share the love.
Yes, or you could do it individually, but yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And then Tom, you had your hand up.
Same question. Thank you.
Okey-dokey. All right, were there any other questions? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to stop sharing for the moment and then move on through the agenda packet to the next item. And the next item in the agenda packet is the call for projects. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anything. Yes, the funding program. So the 2020, the reason why you're all here today is the 2021 SCTA funding program call for projects. So I am going to go in and share my screen again real quick so that we're all looking at the same thing. So SCTA released a call for projects. Sorry, I'm going to expand that so I can still see everybody. SCTA released a announcement, or first we went to the board and said we would like to pursue a strategy where we have a different approach to our funding than we have had in the past. So we took that proposal to the board and we brought it to the TAC, and we brought an application, a draft application to the TAC and said, give us your feedback. We got that. And then we released a call for projects. The intent of this call for projects is to try to identify each jurisdiction's top priorities for funding in transportation for the next 5 years. So what we have done in the past is an individual call for projects for each funding source. But because we can see that there are going to be so many fund sources coming available in the next 12 to 18 months, we are trying to put together a strategy that combines all of them, where we get each jurisdiction's top priorities, and then we can help each jurisdiction identify the right funding sources for that project, rather than having each jurisdiction try to fit a square peg into a round hole each time we release a call for projects. We want you to tell us, our council has talked about this, we've gotten input from the public on these things, these are our top priorities for the next 5 years, this is what we want to do. And it doesn't have to be 5 projects, it could be 3 projects, it could be 2 projects, or it could be 5. That's fine. Transit agencies are eligible to submit their own 5 projects. So if they're, for an example, Petaluma Transit had 4 projects that they wanted to submit. Those don't have to be a subset of what the city of Petaluma submits. So Petaluma Transit and the city of Petaluma can both submit 5 projects. That's fine. Just so that we make sure that we get all of the priorities that we're looking for. So let me go through this a little bit. Each of the projects should address the CTP and Plan Bay Area goals. So connected and reliable, safe and well-maintained, community-oriented and place-based, zero emissions, if you can help it. They should contribute to those goals. The sources of funding that we're talking about, initially, we released this call for projects on this time frame because SCTA is required to submit our proposal for the State Transportation Improvement Program by October. So while we release this call and it does include all of these fund sources, our initial goal is to program the STIP. So there are 2 different fund sources inside the STIP. One is the COVID Relief Supplemental Act, and one is the actual State Transportation Improvement Program. I do want to draw your attention to the fact that the CRISA funds are available in 2022, but the rest of our STIP money is not available until 26-27. So keep that in mind as you're applying. We want to program those funds now, because if we don't program them now, we will likely lose that capacity. I mean, the funding, we don't lose the funding, but there's only so much programming capacity in a STIP in a given fiscal year, and the CTC will program it to those projects that are ready to go. So if we don't program it now, we'll likely lose our opportunity to program until the next STIP cycle, which is why we're trying to program it now. So and we're only talking about a little over $5 million. There's 2.9 and 2.3 respectively in the STIP and CRISA. So keep that in mind as you're applying, that those are the funds that we need to program first, but we will also be looking for your highest priority projects. We will likely release a supplemental call for OBAG 3 once the guidelines and requirements are finalized by MTC. We expect that to happen in December. So that probably won't happen until January, where we release a supplemental. So, and what I mean by supplemental is when we released this call, we included an application that's pretty bare bones, but I would expect that an application process will be a little bit more rigorous for the OBAG 3 funding. There will be requirements that we have to meet. There will be boxes that need to be checked and certain certifications that need to be identified and or confirmed for OBAG 3. So because we don't have that information yet, we will probably release a supplemental call, but I wouldn't expect that your priorities will change between now and then, unless you are deep in the middle of an engagement process right at the moment where you have input from the public still coming in and you're still trying to sort out what your priorities are going to be. Other than that, or if something drastic happens, I would expect your priorities in December to be the same as they are now. So SCTA is going to expect that anything that you submit for OBAG as an application will be something that we get right now during this call for projects. So let's see, what else did I want to go over? Quickly, the timeline for implementation. This was just when each of these things happened. We took the funding opportunities, introduced that idea to the board in June. We brought it to the TAC in June, also in later June. We took the program application itself to the TAC in July. We released the call for projects on August 9th. The call, we will be reviewing. Oh, that says we're reviewing it today. That's what we're doing. That's the whole idea behind that one, is funding, reviewing the funding call today. We will expect to have received your project applications by September 16th. We will summarize, and it's really just a listing at that point of each of the jurisdictions' projects, and then have some proposal for the STIP programming at the September TAC meeting. And then the draft list for our STIP programming is due to MTC on October 6th, but it doesn't go to our board until October 14th, which is why it will be draft when we submit it to MTC. And then we will take it to the board for approval. And then if there are any changes, we will submit those as final after we have our board meeting on October 14th. And then we will transmit the final list on the 15th. And then again, we expect the OBAG guidelines from MTC in December. And then we would probably do the supplemental call in January or February of next year. So with that, now I want to go through the actual application with you. And just so you know, there are a number of links in the staff report that provide you with a lot of different resources. I highly encourage you to look at those. Those are the guidance that we have so far for the various funding programs, and also for Go Sonoma, what we have so far on our website, and a lot of the different information for the SB1 programs, and including the draft STIP guidelines. So with that, I wanted to go over the application itself. This is just the call for projects, but then we get to the application. So just real quick, because I have had some questions, so I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're asking for. Single point of contact should be the person that is on the certification on MTC's website. If it's not, then you need to notify both MTC and SCTA that your SPOC has changed. But do include not only the SPOC, which can be someone completely different than the project manager who is implementing the project. If those two people are different, or if those people are two different people, then please do tell us who the project manager is as well. It doesn't have to be the same person. And really, we would like to know if it is someone different, than if the project manager is someone different than the SPOC. Project title is really pretty basic. Keep in mind that it should be succinct and clear so that we know what it should be distinguishable from other projects, so that we can try to determine. I mean, you don't have to include your city name in it, but it should be distinguishable from other projects. And then a project description. And then all the project types are included in all this various funding requirements that I mentioned. We do want to know what goals the project will address as part of the CTP and the Plan Bay area. And then these are all pretty basic questions. If you could tell us what the complete streets components are, that's great. Do fill out the schedule, because that helps us know when you're going to need your funding. and it will make a difference for, you know, if you're already through your environmental phase and you're well into your design phase, then programming construction funds will not be a problem. Or if you haven't started anything yet and you're asking for construction funds, then we're probably going to push you out a little bit because there's no way that you're going to deliver funding in 2022. That sort of thing. So do include a realistic project schedule. And then in the funding section, tell us how much you're asking for per developmental phase. So the total cost for the planning phase. And then if you're asking for any planning money, again, total amount of the environmental phase, and then how much money you're asking for from this call for projects. Same for each one of those developmental phases. Do also include in this column what your funding match source is, how much it is, and then what the source is. And if, you know, include multiple lines if you have multiple sources. And then tell us how complete that project phase is. So if you've already completed your planning and you've moved on to environmental, then that planning conceptual phase is 100% complete. If you have not done any of this, then each one of these would be 0. That's fine. We just want to know where you are, no judgment. And then do try to break out for us by mode how each of those projects break out in terms of the mode. And then in this form, hopefully this looks pretty familiar because we use something similar in Measure M, but you will include information in all the yellow sections. So tell us your project title, tell us which jurisdiction it's from, tell us your implementing agency. And then this section will auto-populate, so you don't have to put anything in this section. And then in existing fund source 1, you're going to tell us what existing funds you have and then what you're asking for. If you're asking for, so if you had money in TFCA, let's say, then you would put TFCA here. You would tell us when that money is programmed and in what phase. And then down here, you probably don't need any more TFCA. So you're not really asking for any, or maybe you are, I don't know, but that would be that. If you have a second fund source, then that's where you put, so you list each fund source separately, and then you tell us what you have and then what you're asking for. So there's 2 different sections for each fund source. The fund source goes here in the yellow section of each one of those blocks. And then at the very bottom, you'll see additional funding needs. If there are needs that you don't have, you don't know, but you know you're going to need $14 million more and you don't know where it's going to come from, you can put that in here. Okay. And then this is the list of sample projects that we have from the CTP. Now, we asked for projects when we did the CTP, we asked you for your projects so that we could update the comprehensive transportation plan. We asked again for projects when we were going through the development of Go Sonoma, and most of those projects were the same. Some of them changed, that's fine, but these are the projects that you've already submitted, just so that you know that these are kind of what we're expecting to see from you as your priorities. If there is something different from this, do let us know and tell us how it was that that became your priority over the things that you've submitted to us previously. And I think that concludes my presentation on the funding program. So, and this is just the list of all the projects for all the jurisdictions. Yeah. So now I would be happy to take questions. Nancy, I see your hand raised. You go first.
Yeah, I just have actually a couple of questions. So Shauna, on the application itself, how are you looking at, because I see you talk about the PDAs in that first section with yes or no,
Mhm.
but I wonder how this is, and then the earlier page, you identify, you know, the moving forward 2050 goals, which one of them is equity. How are you looking at, you know, I'm sure I'm saying that it's at the, and Chris Barney's on the call, it's the equity opportunity areas that are recognized now that it's a new name by MTC. How are those being considered? So that's a question.
It's pretty much just a new name for what we used to call communities of concern.
Yeah, so
So
we're
it holds the same place as
right.
those.
But where is that in the application? Did I just miss that? Where you
Uh,
check that box?
Probably. Yeah, I don't think we called it that, but we did include a link to that
Right.
in there. So, I mean, you can tell us if it's
Okay.
if
Okay.
it's in an equity priority.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called. Yeah,
Community.
I don't know. Chris
Right.
knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can use that. So then what did I miss what you said, what the eligible project type? How do you describe what that is? I guess I know what project description, that made sense, but what does that look like in terms of a response? And maybe you said it and I just missed it.
So you're going to tell us what kind of project you have. You're going to tell us what mode it's in. You're going to tell us how it applies to the CTP and Plan Bay area goals. And then
Okay.
we're going to evaluate what we get. Because right now I mean, we have that list of projects from the CTP, but
Okay.
are you going to submit your CTP projects? I hope so. But if you don't, you're going to need to tell us more about it.
Okay, so the response to that question is really responding to how it relates to the 2050 goals and you know how we respond to that area below that.
Yeah,
in terms of,
and
okay.
with the idea of the funding sources that are available,
Yeah.
We've linked as much as we can to the guidelines for those funding sources. So you know your project better than us. So if you wanted to tell us what type of project it is so that we can better identify where to file that'd be great.
Okay. And then my last question on the application, and then I'll yield the floor to somebody else on the project status and cost. If so, for example, you know, with Santa Rosa, you know, I know we've got a project that we're done with the environmental, we're done with the planning, we're in design now. Do we still have to fill out the fund source by, you know, phases that are already 100% complete? So
we'd like it because we'd like to know what the total project cost is.
Okay.
And because I mean, it's not necessarily, I mean, particularly for federal fund sources, you can't count that as match.
Mhm.
But for other fund sources, you can say, and in some cases, you can say, look, we spent all this money in the early developmental phases. We'd like 100% reimbursement for OBAG 3 money and then use toll credits as our match. That's a possibility too. So we would like to see all of the information that you have about the project, not just the one that you're applying for, not just the developmental phase you're applying for.
Okay, that's fine. So that for now I'm good, but I'm sure I'm going to have some more questions or comments as the conversation continues. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Steve, you're next.
Hi, Shauna. Hey, here's my assumption is that all these things are going to be over-programmed. What is you guys have any kind of criteria kind of set up yet to sort us all out? Or are you going to toss this on the dais of the board of directors and tell them to pick and choose their favorite babies?
So you can expect that staff will have a recommendation for STIP in October. And beyond that, it will be here's the projects that were submitted. And then
Okay.
we will do a little bit more work, probably come back to the TAC sometime in between now and December to talk about the projects, maybe categorize them a little bit better, maybe come in with some sort of a workshop, maybe. I mean, we don't know until we get everything. And then again, when OBAG comes out, we'll know more. But we're planning on, if using this as our initial, this is what our our work plan is for the next 5 years, is this is what we are expecting everybody else is going to be working on. And now we can all work together to deliver these high priority projects. So even if, because you're right, we've only got a little less than $70 million to program in total. So if we get $400 million worth of ask, we can't fund everything, which is again why we need you to prioritize.
Yeah, I was going to say Hunter's got a list of projects already for $100 million that he just wants to do all by himself, let alone the rest of the department. So I'm got to kind of calm him down a little bit.
Yep.
Is there a checkbox someplace where we can get the unvaccinated vaccinated as well? I just was wondering, because we got some projects that'll do that as well.
Oh, Steve, you're too much.
Thanks, Shauna.
Yep. Elizabeth, you're next.
Thanks, Shauna. For regional parks, I feel like we're perennially the square peg trying to find a hole that our funding for Class 1 trails will fit into. We are looking at our top 5 priorities, but our understanding is that these will also have to be vetted with TPW, and as the county will be coming forward with our top 5. And I know with our Go Sonoma plan, we did prioritize projects with TPW, and we ended up bundling these in a larger context of corridors, which had both the trail, the ped bike connections, as well as the roadway work. So part of that is sharing with everybody from TPW on this call, but also Shauna with this program. It creates some limitations for the number of programs the county as a bundle has, because we cover a much larger landmass than the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, some of the limits to funding opportunities, if we're not on the this 5-year plan, causes me some concern. Things like TDA Article 3, and Stephen Schmitz and I talked about this a bit too. That program has projects identified, including projects for TPW as well as ourselves over multi-years. And so these aren't necessarily the largest or the most expensive projects and may not fit into the metric of the highest priority, however that's determined.
Sure.
But we've already identified a number of projects for that program, and I wouldn't want to lose what we already
and we won't.
planned for those programs.
Yes, absolutely. And we've already done the call for projects, and that program has already been approved. That happened last month, I think, in the last few months. And nothing in that program is going to change. However, if we find that once we've seen all the projects and we know what's out there and what is coming and what everybody's priorities are and what their funding sources are and what their funding needs are, then we might be able to, in the next round, adjust in TDA and TFCA where those funds, like we might decide, oh, those funds, like somebody else might be able to say, oh, I can wait on my funds and let's roll that into we'll wait on ours and roll it into somebody else that can go first. And then we'll take some other funding source instead, or we'll wait until a later year to get those funds. We're not going to change anything else about the program. We're simply including it as one of the funding options because we wanted to see a whole picture of what our potential funding sources were. So we're not going to change anything about the way that the programs are implemented or anything that is already programmed, unless it was with full support and request by the jurisdiction and or agency that already has the program. It would be based on a decision that was made after we see what we get in this call for projects. And it would be done, we wouldn't be forcing that on anybody. We're not talking about taking money away from anybody that's already programmed or any plan. Is that clear enough? You still look concerned?
There's still the difficulty of the top 5 projects and the land area for the county as a whole, and fitting in ped bike as well as everything else. the county.
Sure. It's complicated. Ken, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shauna. I have a series of kind of small questions. These up to 5 projects that we're going to submit to you on, I assume we're looking at OBAG 3 would also be a funding source in that. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Where do we, if they're not in the CTP, where would we describe the value of the project and why they're not in the CTP? Where would we do that?
You're going to be hard pressed to get a project. I mean, hopefully everything you submit is in the CTP. It's technically not eligible if it's not in the CTP.
Got it.
But
Okay.
if it's a project that the CTP does have programmatic categories, right?
Yeah.
That would cover some bike ped projects. If your bike ped project is not listed individually because it's not big enough, because whatever, then you could identify that it is part of that programmatic category. Technically, what has to happen is it needs to be in the CTP in order to be in the RTP. It absolutely must be in the RTP in order to be eligible.
Okay.
And the RTP is where the funding categories are, but the list of projects that we have in the CTP is the list of projects that we would be expecting. If it
Okay.
is not listed in that list of projects for the CTP, then we would like to see a justification for why it should be included above the projects that you have listed in the CTP.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Okay.
we got all this input from the public and they are demanding that we do something about X street in, wherever.
Well, okay, good info to have. I'm just looking through the CTP, and I didn't work directly on it, but it's pretty generic. I mean, it says let's go through and do either reconstruction, rehabilitation of the entire roadway system. So it's got a big chunk of change for that. So I assume that under the whole roadway network, I can pull out a project that's a part of that is a reconstruction, that's kind of a bite-sized chunk to be one of these 5 projects. Is that kind of a...
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's easy.
Independent utility, but I would call it a phase of whatever project is listed in the CTP.
Yeah. And are you thinking that these 5 projects, they should be somewhat bite-sized chunks? We're not gonna repave every roadway in Petaluma. We've got 125 million for that in the CTP, but we can do one phase of a multi-phase project of that overall request that we made in the CTP. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
mean, we're really for OBAG, we're talking about approximately $25 million that has to be spread out across the county. So
Yeah. I mean, every project that I seem to have worked on for the city, it ends up we're trying to phase things to get them built and finding creative ways of doing that. So okay, thank you.
Sure thing. Tony, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is when you went over that spreadsheet, the funding spreadsheet, and you had those yellow cells and blue cells, you said that we should answer all the yellow cells, but then you started talking about the white cells. Do you have to do both the yellow and the white cells, but not the blue cells, because those are automatically done?
So the gray cells are the ones that you don't
Okay.
do anything.
Okay, so
Because
the gray cells.
those are automatically calculated based on what gets input into the yellow cells. And ultimately, if you don't have an existing fund source, if you don't have anything already programmed, let me use Measure M as an example. You do have existing programming. So when we do this for Measure M, we say, this is what we have programmed already. And then in the yellow cells, we say, this is the change that we want to those existing program funds.
Oh,
But if
okay.
there is no existing program funds, you're just asking for the new funds, right? You're the
Got it.
proposed fund source.
Okay,
And that's the yellow cells.
okay. I think I understand. The other question is, one of our CTP projects is a joint project, the ATP. It's called the Alternate West Route to Sebastopol. Oh, excuse me, the West Sebastopol Active Transportation Plan. And so that was an ATP grant that my understanding is that the city applied for that. They were really close to getting it, but it was a joint project with the county. And so I just wanted to find out if the county is going to be putting that on their list, or should the city put it on our list and just have both sponsors shown on there? And so I don't know who with the county I should be talking to on that.
Yeah, that's probably with Janice and Nader and Johannes and Steve, all those guys, guys and gals, all of them.
Okay.
I would expect there to be a discussion between all of those people.
Okay.
And then that would be, so if you wanted to have an offline conversation with them.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll set something up so that we can kind of talk about that project. And then one of the other questions is that I have is that we have a smaller project that's part of a larger CTP project, because if we don't get the funding, because that project is huge, it's like a $9 million. The grant was for like $9 million.
Oh, we lost you. You hit mute by accident there.
It was that project that I was talking about is such a large project. There are smaller elements of that project that if we don't get the funding, we'd like to be able to apply for that. Is that okay to do? It's not in the CTP as a standalone project, but it's part of a larger CTP project.
If the smaller portions have independent utility, then I would argue that you can.
Okay.
But I would list them as phases of that larger CTP project.
Got it. Okay. And then the last question I have is the timing for the city council to confirm the priority list. When, I mean, obviously we have to take it to council, and then you take it to council and they say, well, we want to add this, that, and the other thing. You don't know that until you go before them. What is the timing that changes could be submitted to you after the call for projects ends?
So we started talking about this in June. So that was the expectation, that you guys would start working on your priority list and have enough time to get it to your councils before you have to come to us in September. So we're not expecting a lot of changes. I mean, like I said, if something drastic happens between, like, say your council decides that they want some absolutely different priority than what you've proposed, then that might happen between this call and the OBAG 3 call, but there would need to be a justification for why those were different. But we need to know what your priorities are. And we've been talking about this, and we've done the call for projects for the CTP and for Go Sonoma. So hopefully you're not getting a lot of different projects.
No.
And I understand that you're talking about smaller bits because the CTP projects are very large, but you guys know what you have the capacity to deliver in the next 5 years, right? Like so that's one important factor, is don't ask for more than you can actually deliver, and ask for those things that you think are your highest priorities to get done. What the public is telling you, what your council is telling you, what your public works has decided, those should all be input into, and your planning department too should all have input into what your priorities are for delivering in the next 5 years.
Okay. So the expectation is by September 16th, that list should have already gone to your council, is what you're saying?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Vincenzo.
Yeah, thanks, Shauna. So I just want to summarize in, I guess, 5 points when I'm listening to this. One, the call for project asks for 5 top priority projects for each of the agencies. 2, these projects have to be in the comprehensive transportation plan. pages 27 and 39 of our agenda has a sample projects already in the CTP. So point 4 is Sonoma County has 17 listed in there. So point 5 is we just simply have to winnow down 5 and say these are our 5 of 17 top priorities and submit it to you by September 16th.
Yes, but we also want them to be deliverable, right? So there should be, it should be not just winnowing down what's on this list, but what, I mean, and I know it's difficult for the county. You've got to balance all the different departments, you know, parks and public works and possibly DHS. I mean, who knows? But you also have to, at least Sonoma County Transit gets their own list,
right.
But it has to be deliverable, and it has to not be our entire, you know, funding source amount. I mean, we can't accommodate 5 projects that are going to take all $70 million that we have, right? So it should be a reasonable amount of money that you're asking for. It should be something that you are absolutely ready to deliver. And it should be something that you have support from your board of supervisors on.
And maybe to help Tony out, would that be applicable to hers? Sebastopol has 4 projects on this list. Can she just submit all those 4 projects without having to go to council? Because that's 4 of 5.
Well, I believe that those projects are monetarily more than what we have available. So I would say no to that. I don't think she, I mean, she could certainly submit subsets of those, you know, phases of each of those projects and say, these are our, but it should also have some input from the public and from your council and from your departments, right? This is, I mean, the idea behind it is your planning department should have been involved when you developed the list of projects that got submitted for the CTP and the RTP. And then Public Works gets behind what they have capacity to deliver in the next 5 years, right? So even if we gave it all to you, you probably couldn't deliver all of it in the next 5 years, get through environmental and design and right away and construction on everything, right? So pick your priorities for the next 5 years and know that you're not going to get everything. You're not going to get everything all in the first year. You know, we're going to have to shift stuff around. You're not going to get everything that you ask for. So make your request reasonable. I hope that's helpful. I hope that's not too limiting, but that's the reality. Okay, I see Sean and then Nancy. I'm sorry, did I finish with you, Vincenzo? Was that it?
Yes,
did that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Sean, go ahead.
So, you know, I heard you had just mentioned, you know, try to make it a reasonable cost, and with 70 million being kind of the estimated total, you know, we don't want to ask for $1 million as every agency, because then we're undersubscribed. We don't want to ask for 100 million every agency, because obviously nobody's going to get what they want. Is there an average range of a total amount that each agency should kind of be looking at to submit our projects for that range?
I am not allowed to tell you that there is a target amount, because I mean, the federal government has specifically said that we're not allowed to use formulas. So I think if I were doing this myself, I would probably look to either the LSR formula or the LBT formula, something similar, which takes road miles and population into account and then gives you a percentage of 100 based on the jurisdictions that are in Sonoma County, and probably use that as a guide. But I can't guarantee that. I mean, that's not a guarantee. I'm not saying that you will get X% of what's available. I mean, we will have to review everything that gets submitted, and we're going to try to make everybody get something. And we're also going to try to meet the goals of the CTP and the RTP. So they should probably be competitive. And I would say that things that are going to be most competitive are going to be things that you have input from the public on. Not just outreach to the public, but input from the public, where the public has said, we want this, or the public has said, that project that you're proposing would be better if you do this, and then you changed that project, that's really valuable information. Does that help?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, good. Nancy, I see your hand is still raised. Do you have another question?
I do. Actually, I'm going to have an observation, Shauna. I think you're doing a great job of summarizing, what your goals are. The things about being deliverable, and what the prioritization with our council. Santa Rosa, actually, we're probably a 2-month process to get to our council and get on the agenda. And, we pulled it off. We're going to our council on the 14th of September because we knew how important this was to get to our council. So, I mean, I'm late on my Measure M letters this year because of that, Shauna. Usually I'm right out the gate to you first, but we've really refocused and pivoted on this call for projects. So I'll say that everything that Shauna is sharing with the group, it's really pretty spot on. I do want to have a clarifying point. And somebody I think brought up pavement maintenance, and that to me, that's not separate from this call for project. That was my understanding, right?
It absolutely is included. Yes.
It is or is not?
Is.
Okay, so that's interesting to know, because I thought that the maintenance, and this is also for bus, that was separate. That's not included in this. So I'm not. That's an interesting thing that we weren't aware of.
Well, it's, I mean,
because we're not including.
You go to all these meetings too, Nancy. I know that you and Steve and I and anybody else, Larry, everybody that's been to the local streets and roads working group meetings is frustrated by how the RTP goals have changed what is available for Fix It First. And Fix It First is still included, but it is not overtly stated the way that it used to be. So we have to get our heads around being able to provide maintenance and address these other goals that are also important and becoming more important all the time. So we address them by doing safety projects where, this is not safe, road isn't safe for bicyclists because it's potholed all over the place and that needs to be addressed. Or so fit it into the goals, but yes, that is part of what is available and that will be included in OBAG. I mean, we can't use STIP for maintenance, I don't think, but we can use OBAG for it.
So I guess my question is, and this is really, I was under the guidance that it didn't include. I mean, this call for projects, we were going to have our maintenance money anyway, and that would be part of the OBAG 3 conversation. And so, that hasn't even come to our radar screen. It's been because that was, and that's why I need some clarification on, because we haven't been, and that was Jason's understanding that was something that, it wasn't part of this call because we all were going to get our maintenance money somehow. So I guess that's, and I don't know if the other jurisdictions had the same understanding, but
Nancy, this is Suzanne. We've been talking about OBAG. Where did you think maintenance money was going to come from?
That's a great question, Suzanne. And I see that's where it's confusing to me, because
it's not confusing. It's OBAG. It's the same. I mean, that's it. That's the program.
Right. And I get that, Suzanne. And so that's why I'm bringing this up, because I thought that I had heard that, that the OBAG, that would be, that's kind of there already. And this is like, knowing that we'd still get our maintenance money, right? So we haven't so far
knowing you would get your maintenance money from what? From your general fund, or I mean,
no. So, and I'm sorry that maybe I just misunderstood some of the comments that were coming out, but that, and so this is good to get that clarification, right? So for Santa Rosa, we were not operating with that as being part of this call for projects, right? And so that's, my bad or whatever, but that, we need to reconcile that and figure that out. So.
All right, Nancy. So your question that you phrased to Shauna sounded like this. It sounded like, can we submit a maintenance project on this call for projects? And Shauna's answer was correct. She said, yes, you can submit a maintenance project on this call for projects. But I believe where your confusion is coming in is that your question was that you intended to ask was, is the Measure M, LSR, and LBT apportionment programs part of this call for projects? And the answer to that is no, it's not. If you pull up the table that's in the staff report,
okay,
there is no reference to the Measure M, LSR, or LBT funds. Those would be great match sources for your project. So if you wanted to put those funds on a project, that's great, but that's not part of the 70 million. Okay. So
that's the clarification. So it's the Measure M, now Go Sonoma, that's not part of the call for project for our maintenance, right?
See, now you're what you said. It's Measure M, not Go. So no, there is a Go Sonoma component, right? But the Go Sonoma component does not include the apportionment programs. So let's say it like that.
Yes. Okay.
Programs from Measure M and Go Sonoma are excluded from this call for projects.
Got it.
With the exception of could be good matching funds for your project.
Right. Okay. So that's the clarification. So, and that's okay. That's my bad. I probably made some logical leap to OBAG 3, which and I, I'll take ownership of that. So this is good to hear that. Right. So, all right. What was my other comment? Yeah, I think I'm good for now, Shauna. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. I see Tom Conlon is next.
Thank you. I agree with Nancy. That's really helpful for all the clarification in this conversation. And James and Shauna, thanks so much. I want to go back to Steve's good comment about, prioritization criteria and the kind of, how the board's going to be making decisions, as well as other funding entities. And Elizabeth's comment about the bundling of projects, kind of that strategic approach to this. The goals, the form has a simple checkbox for identifying the goals. And as a way to communicate this clearly to the public and to the board members, can we count on the checkboxes for safe and safe and well-maintained and zero emissions? Can we count on the safe one, meaning that the project will not, if it's all funded, lead to an increase in collisions or an increase in fatalities? And on the zero emissions, can we count on that not leading to a net increase in emissions? Or are those checkboxes really not very useful for this need to prioritize?
We don't currently have a performance metric for those items. Doesn't mean that we're not going to, because as I mentioned, at least for the OBAG projects, we're still waiting for what MTC is going to give us. So it's very possible that there might be performance metrics that they expect us to use, in which case we will be able to evaluate those based on what the input that we get, but there may be additional information. Right now, we're asking that the jurisdictions self-identify what those projects are.
Okay, so I'm suggesting that might be one way to help determine the prioritization and help with the communication challenges to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Are there any other questions regarding the call for projects or the application and how to fill it out? Or the deadlines that I have enumerated thus far? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll call that item complete. Thank you all for your participation and your input. It's all been very helpful for us to understand what your questions are so that we can try to make this as easy as possible when we get all of those projects submitted. The next item is the draft SCTA RCPA board meeting agenda. And so just for information's sake, we have a number of items on the consent calendar, Q4 financials, and budget adjustment. And then we have Measure M Design Services during construction amendment for a contract with BKF. On the regular calendar, we will be talking about electric vehicle strategy and resolution of local support to ban new gas stations under the RCPA items. Under the SCTA items, we will be talking about the American Recovery Plan funding distribution to transit operators. We'll be talking about the final comprehensive transportation plan. We'll be talking again about this call for projects. Pretty much what we got from you guys will inform what we tell the board. And then we'll also be talking about the future of transit ad hoc. So if you have anything or any questions regarding what's going on the board agenda, I'd be happy to answer those questions now, but hopefully this gives you an opportunity to review what's going to the board and be able to check in with your directors before the board meeting if there's anything that you feel that they need to know. Steve, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Shauna, I know we're talking about OBAG as our federal funnel to us. This is really a question maybe for, who's peeking through the keyhole on the federal side for the stimulus money, right? I don't know if you guys have heard anything more. If there's any more movement, there's lots of posturing going on, but I haven't seen anything sort of definitive kind of falling out of this. I don't know if you guys have touched base anywhere to see if there's any more kind of, if this is starting to coalesce into anything that we can kind of count on, or how this might affect all these things we're talking about right now.
It's a really good question, and I'm waiting with bated breath, but I haven't heard anything, and I would defer to Suzanne if she's heard anything, or I know James just dropped off the call, so I would ask him too, but I know he's not with us. So I don't have anything to contribute, and I will certainly be talking about it with you guys when I start hearing, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, usually we hear something from legislative affairs, from MTC and those folks, but I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah, there's a September meeting that I would expect that we will hear something if there's anything to report, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we had, and I apologize if I skipped it, but I think now we are going to go to Janet because she had an item for you that got added, that got deleted by accident. So I had to add it at the end. So I didn't have to adjust all the item numbers since the agenda packet had already gone out. So my apologies to Janet, but I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thanks, Shauna. And I'll keep this short. It's been a long meeting for all of you, I know. It was just an update to let you know that we did take the CTP to the board of directors in July, and we'll be bringing it back to them on the 13th of September. Included in the update will be some clarification on the plan performance, with some information, additional information on GHG reducing strategies. We'll also have some information on additional information on funding that's come in since the plan was the original draft was put out. A couple of days ago, I asked you all for a little bit more project information. That's mostly for our own information, won't really have that much to do with the board presentation. But I would, if you can fill out the spreadsheets and let me know, I'd appreciate it. As we move forward with evaluation of projects in general, at least from the CTP side, we have some good tools that we're using, the Sonoma County travel model being foremost among them. And that's what we use to evaluate the projects in the plan.
We have 232 projects in the plan. I'm pleased to hear that you'll be selecting from there to do your call for projects. Makes the plan more valuable when we can make all those connections. If anybody has any questions of me about the CTP, be happy to answer them. If not, that's all I have.
I see Tom Conlon and Steve Burrowbow. So Tom Conlon, go ahead.
Thank you. So it sounds like the updated draft will just appear in the board minutes or a board agenda packet. It won't be circulated in advance to this group or to the Citizens Advisory Committee.
That's correct.
All right. And so maybe you could be a little more specific then about what those, how you're planning to restructure the document to address the concerns that were raised by the board at the last meeting?
Sure. Chapter 4 is how do we reach our goals? And we've done some condensing of the information we had there to place more emphasis on the actual elements of the performance evaluation. And much of that information was in the plan already. Some of it in the appendix, and so we've brought it up forward into the actual chapter on meeting our GHG goals, if that's what you're talking about, including the shift strategies, and then there are some climate mobilization strategies that we're including as well.
Right. I guess that was the bigger concern, was the even just the narrative story of how the CTP is reinforcing and not undermining the climate mobilization strategy. That struck me as being the thing I thought I heard the board members, many of the board members, maybe even a majority of the board members saying was something that plan needed to have reinforced. So are you feeling good about that you're gonna be able to make that argument at the board, or we want to support a strong CTP that's going to go forward and bring the whole county together for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So do I. And I'll just to answer one of your questions, I'll feel much better on September 14th. There is some degree of uncertainty right now as to how well we make the presentation. It's a lot to ask of a transportation plan with 232 projects in a built-out system, to ask those projects to significantly change greenhouse gas emissions. It's a lot to ask, especially when those projects are particularly in need for all of the things that happen around the county. We're not talking, if you take a look at the project list, we're talking about relatively small, a lot of small projects across the county. And so when looking ahead to 2050 and how we might reduce emissions, it's really more about behavior and providing good options. So we're recommending, significant increase in transit, significantly more bike paths, and then a whole lot of suggestions and encouragement and strategies on how to do behavior change, which is really the key to all of this. That's pretty much what I have, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Our economy is in trouble, right? If we fail to achieve the greenhouse gas goals, we're going to continue to have these economy-wide and culture-wide shutdown events that are just causing so much havoc. So, and transportation is the majority of our emissions. So
I understand.
Everybody understands these points.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Tom. I believe Steve Bertelbaugh has been waiting. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm learning to unmute. Yes. My sense is that most of the changes that are going to get made have to be done on the existing network. Those may emerge as projects, converting class 2 lanes to class 4 lanes, for example. Anything that makes it more attractive for people to bicycle instead of using cars and to walk in neighborhoods, to make neighborhoods more attractive for walkers. And so I'm saying not only to the plan, but for every public works department, a shift in focus to making it very safe and attractive for people to use bicycles is going to be important. And I would suggest that everybody look for a town in the Netherlands that is about the same size as yours and see what they've been able to do over several decades, and then figure out how you can do the same in several years, because the real target for reduction in VMT and greenhouse gases is pushing forward. It's going to be 2030, at most 2035, rather than 2045 and 2050. And I think the one thing we can do to help every other community and county is to show how we can actually make those shifts now. Thank you.
Agreed, Steve. And to the TAC at large, I'd just like to point out that we're likely to hear more of these comments from our board members. It's hard not to come back to the project list as the source of the problem and the source of the solution as well. So there will be probably some more hard look at the project list as we move forward. That's all I have, Shauna.
Thank you, Janet. I don't see any other hands raised. So I think that was our last item other than other business. Is there anything that anyone else would like to bring up before we adjourn? I don't see any hands raised. I don't hear anybody speaking. So I'm going to say thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure, and we are adjourned. We'll see you again next month in September, where we will be talking about the projects that we received for the call. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.